Welcome to The Comical Engineers, fun and facts with LCTS, where engineering meets experience, with a dash of humor. In this episode, we talk to Uday Turaga, founder and CEO of ADI Analytics, who shares his journey from the refinery floor to advising global energy leaders. Get ready for insights on energy strategy, oil and gas market shifts, and building a business from the ground up, plus a few comical stories from Uday's refinery days. Now, let's dive in.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to our new episode of the Comical Engineers, Fun and Facts with LCTS, our LCTS podcast. I'm your host, Eberhard Lucke. As always, welcome. And before we get started, as usual, please, wherever you follow our podcast, we publish it through our YouTube channel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe to our channel or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, and like this episode and all the other content that we put out there, and share it with anybody who you think might like it and enjoy watching it. So as usual, we have a special guest for you today. Before that, let me introduce my co-host, Stan Spears. Hey, Stan. Thanks again for joining me. And our special guest today is Uday Turaga. And I will let him introduce himself and tell a little bit about, his career and how he got to the place where he is today. Welcome, Uday.
Thank you, Eberhard. Thank you, Stan, for having me here. It's a pleasure, and I appreciate you making time for me and inviting me over to this podcast. I run ADI Analytics. ADI is a boutique consulting firm. We are based here in Houston. Focus on three markets: oil and gas, energy, and chemicals. I started the company 16 years ago, so it's been a while. I've been at it since 2009. I started just by myself in 2009, but since then we have grown the firm over the years. Prior to starting ADI, I used to work for Booz & Company, the management consulting firm, in their Houston office here, also focused on energy and chemicals. I was part of the energy and chemicals practice at Booz. And before that, I spent 6 years with ConocoPhillips. When I was with ConocoPhillips, Phillips 66 was part of the company as well. So at that point of time, in the early 2000s, it was an integrated oil and gas company with upstream, midstream, and refining operations. And I joined them after my PhD. I got my PhD from Penn State, worked on heterogeneous catalysis for my PhD. And I got interested in this space because of my father. My father used to work in the oil and gas industry as well. He was a scientist as well, and spent all of his career in India. And the last part of his career, he ran India's largest national lab focused on petroleum refining and petrochemicals. So, he was a very inspiring figure in my life and career. And that got me interested into energy, that got me interested into science and technology and research. And that's how I got my start here, if you will.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Excuse me. Tell us a little bit about the ADI itself. Does ADI have a specific acronym? What does it stand for?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it's when I incorporated the company in 2009, it was ADI Analytics. ADI is actually a Sanskrit word, means the first or the origin. But it's one of the unintentional elements of branding, right? Like I go around to conferences handing out my cards and people would say ADI, and it just became an easier way for us to work with that. But yeah, that's the origin of the name.
Great.
Okay. So what made you go from from doing science and technology and research to actually doing the type of consulting and work that you do now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I came to the US in 1998, went to Penn State for my PhD. I was part of Penn State's fuel science program in the Earth and Mineral Sciences College. And Penn State's EMS college and fuel science programs were very interesting and very unique in the traditional spaces that we work in. For example, chemical engineering. They were designed to be a multidisciplinary program. They were not located in the traditional chemistry or chemical engineering departments, but were in a different college, and took this holistic view of fuels all the way from geology and geophysics all the way to their use for various applications. The fuel science program's genesis lay in the history of coal science and technology. Pennsylvania was a big coal producer for a long period of time. And since then, the program evolved to kind of focus and take a broader view on fuels. But what I particularly was exposed to at Penn State was this broad interdisciplinary thinking that covered not just the science and technology of fuels in a very broad way. We for example, studied how fuels are formed, but also took courses in combustion science taught by professors, for example, who held dual appointments in mechanical engineering as well as in fuel science in the fuel science program. But that just gave me a lot of exposure into a broad range of things: energy policy, fuels policy, the business of producing and selling these fuels, operations. And I think that showed to me how interesting and vibrant the broader energy landscape was. And so when I went to ConocoPhillips, those interests were further magnified because I was now exposed to the full value chain of operations, right? Like from producing oil and gas all the way to transporting it and then refining it into fuels for various applications. And I mean, this is the nature of energy, right? At any given point or time, it's not a boring industry. Things are always happening. There's a strong geopolitical angle. There's a lot of innovation that's occurring. There's constant transformation of the industry through mergers and acquisitions. There's a lot of introduction of new interesting technologies. And as a person who had much wider, broader interests, it became harder to kind of say that I'm going to build my career in heterogeneous catalysis. And companies tend to reward people who bring the ability to kind of bridge multiple functions. And in that sense, at ConocoPhillips, I started out doing R&D, but then very quickly was exposed into operations, was exposed into strategy, and was exposed to a lot of other elements that just slowly pushed me more towards the business end of the equation. And so that's when I got my MBA from UT Austin, went to work for Booz & Company. And then after that, I started ADI in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After 16 years, Uday, of operation, you've got to have some great advice for anybody that's going from a one-man operation to where you're at now. What's the couple of key items that you could share that would encourage those entrepreneurs out there to take similar steps? Not to be competition, but you've got a great success story behind you, I know.
Yeah, I understand. When people are posed these questions, right, you'll hear a lot of good advice and all that, but really, right, luck matters more than anything else, right? I mean, you can come in with all the preparation, you can come in with all the network and contacts that you have, and you can have a terrific offering, but luck plays just an outsized role, right? When I started the company, I was going to focus predominantly on fuels, refining on the downstream part of the oil and gas industry. But there's just absolutely no work in 2009 and 10 in those spaces. So in spite of having a network that I used to take pride in, it became very hard to kind of find people who are willing to write a check to do a piece of research or analysis or build a model or something like that. But around the same time, the Department of Energy was investing a lot of money in early stage technologies. And we wrote a proposal to them to look at a number of things. We wrote a number of proposals to the Department of Energy, and one of them got funded. And that just allowed us to build a runway for a couple of years. And the project that got funded, interestingly, was looking at geothermal energy and how we could learn from oil and gas operations and reduce the cost of geothermal energy. So I think that runway became critical for us. We used that time to kind of educate the market about us, to understand what are the needs. And then that was also the time when the shale boom was picking up, and slowly we kind of developed capabilities to serve upstream oil and gas operators. And a lot of the work through the first 4 or 5 years of the company was just focused in service of these upstream E&P independents who were developing shale resources at a rapid clip and needed a lot of help with market analysis, costs and economics, technology assessments. And that's where we got lucky, if you will.
You think the background, especially on your resume with exposure and experience with ConocoPhillips, had a role to play in some of that too? I know we found we're not 6 degrees separated. We probably have very similar contexts in our faces about, especially now that I think about it more, I think that's probably where I remember some of our contacts with your name that may have been associated in the past. But I know that the ConocoPhillips organization carries a lot of weight with what they do, the people they do it with, and people they put trust in. So that's sure that's a testimony for you also.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, ConocoPhillips is a terrific brand, but I think more than that, right? ConocoPhillips has this incredible culture of taking people fresh out of school and then developing them into well-rounded professionals, right? I remember the time that I spent at ConocoPhillips was predominantly in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and once when I was finishing up my PhD, I had an internship at ExxonMobil, and I was very hopeful that I'd eventually go work at ExxonMobil on the East Coast. But while I was waiting for that, I was interviewed. I got an offer from ConocoPhillips, so I flew down to Tulsa and then drove up to Bartlesville to interview. And it was late in the night, and there was this pitch dark, the drive from Tulsa to Bartlesville, and I said, I don't think I'm going to be coming back here. But then the next day, when I walked into the research centers at ConocoPhillips, the kind of people that I met was just incredibly, incredibly inspiring. I mean, these were sharp people. These were people who had spent their careers working on critical problems that we were reading about in academic journals. And most importantly, these were all nice, humble, kind people who are willing to sit down, who are willing to give you more credit than you deserved for the work that you had done as a graduate student, and were truly curious, right? And so to me, I think that was the bigger part, is that I got an incredible start by working at ConocoPhillips, and that then helped me to be to kind of shape our consulting firm over the years.
Yeah, people like that will allow that barren drive from Tulsa to Bartlesville be at least acceptable for the period of time that you have to get from there to one place to another. So I appreciate that very much. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so you mentioned luck, and I tend to agree. There's that element of being the right place at the right time in order to get projects or make a contact, meet somebody who will help you later on in the business. Sometimes you even know at the time when you meet them that maybe later on they are going to help you and your company to grow your business. But I also believe that when you get that opportunity, you also have to be ready. You have to educate yourself. You have to know what you're doing, what you're talking about. You have to be willing to put in the work. when you get the chance. So, but yeah, I agree. There's that element as well. Now we talked about you and your career. We talked a little bit about ADI and how it came together. And people can go to your website and they can go to you have a page on LinkedIn. You're active on LinkedIn, so they get some information. But for the people listening, what kind of services do you offer, and maybe an overview of all the industry sectors that you cover with those services?
Yeah, sure, Eberhard. So, we focus on ADI focuses on three markets, right? Oil and gas, energy, and chemicals. And the work that we do is quite broad within these three segments. So if you take oil and gas, we work across the value chain, right? We work in upstream, midstream, fuels and refining, gas and LNG markets. And that's been our approach, right? In the markets that we focus, our approach has always been provide coverage across the value chain. So similarly, if you take chemicals, we start all the way from feedstocks, which actually dovetails nicely with the oil and gas industry, right? And then we go into conversion, the olefins, the aromatics, and then further down into the polymers, plastics. And actually, 8 years ago, we acquired Chemical Market Resources, which had a lot of expertise in chemicals, polymers, and plastics. With that acquisition, we now have coverage even beyond the polymers and plastics, in the sense that we also work with converters, processors, and brand owners who are taking these materials, whether it is for food packaging, healthcare, rubber and footwear applications. So we take pride in saying that we kind of provide you coverage of the entire hydrocarbon value chain, right, from the wellhead down to the bristles on your toothbrush, right? We kind of have the capability to serve the entire value chain. And then the third market is energy, which we define very broadly to include power and electricity markets, but also a lot of energy transition markets. So low carbon power, renewable power, biofuels, hydrogen, carbon capture, energy storage. So those are the markets that we serve. Now, within these markets, we help clients essentially with very granular, authentic market research and intelligence, technology assessments, cost economic analysis, corporate strategy, a lot of due diligence work, a lot of project financing work, right? Essentially developing independent assessments of projects that project developers are proposing that they can then use to go raise financing and provide lenders with the conviction that this is a good project that can be executed. And so that's the kind of work that we do. The last thing I'll say is we work for a broad range of clients, right? We obviously do a lot of work with the larger operators like Exxon, BP, Shell, but also do a lot of work with the E&P independents, the refining independents, the midstream players. But then just through word of mouth, we have supported a lot of EPCs, OFSC, oilfield service companies like SLB, for example, or a lot of companies selling equipment like pumps and compressors and other turbo machinery into the oil and gas space. So the likes of Siemens, Honeywell, Emerson, Schneider, we have served them as well. And the last leg of our business is we do a lot of due diligence for private equity investors in particular, and to a certain extent, venture capital investors. So we do quite a bit of work for them as well, primarily transaction support, commercial due diligence for various deals in the market.
Okay, that's very good. That's a broad range, and I guess that gives you a lot of exposure, but also a lot of diversification throughout the market, different sectors, as well as different groups of clients, either on the manufacturing side, as you said, operators, equipment suppliers. So I think that's very good diversification that gives you a lot of breadth, and also I would assume a lot of kind of security as to baseline income of work.
Yeah, no, So a lot of people will ask us like, how, do you specialize in a specific area within oil and gas? And our answer is, we work across the value chain. And the reason we work across the value chain is because, first of all, our team brings a broad range of expertise across the value chain. But then secondly, we also have a methodology that we think is very effective in helping in allowing us to help clients across this entire value chain, right? So sometimes it's the methodology and the process that matters more than necessarily how well or how deeply you know. In fact, it's that methodology that allows us to provide more dispassionate, independent, truly differentiated analysis, as opposed to, let's say, somebody who brings very deep expertise in just midstream. Sometimes opinion is what is driving a lot of your recommendations, as opposed to looking at the data in an objective fashion. But yeah, I mean, so we have served over 400 clients, Eberhard, over the last 16 years. And so pretty much every year, right, some of these clients are coming back. So that allows us to kind of provide with some sort of a stable base of revenue for the firm. But then every year we have to hustle and go, because we want to keep growing, right? So every year there's about 60-70% of the work that kind of comes in, but the rest of it, you have to actively be out there.
You have to develop,
Yeah.
new business to be developed. I was going to ask what the relationship is, but 60-70% is kind of repeat work or ongoing work, and then the rest you have to fill up with new clients and new projects coming in. Yeah. Very good. If for the people that follow me and the stuff that I say in podcasts or in videos, I'm always very supportive of what you do for your clients, because when people ask, why did this project fail? Why did this client fail? Why do we have these many companies that don't get to successful project execution? In many cases, my answer is that they focus too much on the technology or on how to get from A to B, which is something that can be solved. We know technology is there. We know the chemistry works, the physics work. What they don't understand is the envelope that they work in, right? They need to have the front end, the feedstock supply. It has to be there. It has to be available. Yeah. And it has to be affordable. And also they have to provide whatever they do, produce energy or fuel or whatever. They have to be in a market where there's a demand, where they can actually sell it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't understand that. They want to force the round peg into the square hole. And they don't understand the overall picture that they need to look at. And I think this is what you do. You provide this information to the clients so they understand, as you said, the whole value chain, right? From the feedstock, how to get it, where to get it, how much it will cost, all the way through the manufacturing chain up to the markets where they can sell. So to me, while we focus on the technical portion, helping the clients once they have the feedstock, what to do with it to get to the product, I think this is not why the projects fail. I think they fail because people do not understand the importance of having this commercial envelope around the technology that needs to fit and also needs to be viable. So I think it's very important what you do. Now, outside of doing the services, I know because I attended a few of these conferences, you also organize conferences where you invite people to talk, to be on panels and discuss certain developments in the industry. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in 2017, we experimented with the first ADI forum, right? One of our team members had been pushing us for many years to host a conference, and we kept saying no. And then finally, we said, okay, we want to grow, so let's try something, right? And so we started the ADI forum in 2017. And We really enjoyed hosting the conference, actually. So since then, every year we do it, and we do a lot of marketing around it. So that's why people think that we host a lot of events, but it's actually just one conference.
Just one.
It's usually
Okay.
the first quarter of the year, and it's called the ADI Forum. And again, the idea is to provide this value chain wide view of what is happening in the markets that we are serving, right? So oil and gas, energy, and chemicals. So we'll have a panel on upstream, a panel on midstream, a panel on refining, a panel on energy transition, a couple panels on chemicals. And then every panel we get 2 or 3 speakers, right? I remember we spoke on gas to liquids and gas
Yes.
monetization you had kindly agreed to be a guest on that panel a few years ago. And we basically just have a conversation, right? What are the issues that we see at that point of time? What are the projects that our speakers are working on? So we get those perspectives. And the forum has slowly grown over the years, right? Hosting a conference is actually a lot of work.
Yeah.
And the real value, it's the big conferences that you see out there, they probably have economics that work, but for a small conference, the economics are actually quite challenging. So the reward is not necessarily in the commercial value of the conference itself, but the reward is in the fact that you bring all your clients together at one place once a year. You think about what are the topics that are relevant. So that's a very intellectually stimulating exercise. And then you actually go through the process of recruiting speakers. And on that day, there's this intense exchange of ideas that it leaves you very energized. And to us, that's been the primary objective of the conference, right? That's why when I open the conference, I say that the ADI Forum is a labor of love, because there's a lot of work that goes in, and we sometimes wonder whether we can keep doing this in the future. But so far so good. We've the 9th forum is coming up on January 28, 2026. So I'd encourage all your audience to come and join us at the conference.
Yep. Yep. As I said, please follow ADI on their website or on LinkedIn. You get the announcements, and I can speak from experience. I attended once in the audience, and as you said, one year I was on the panel, and the amount of information you get, the overview you get on the market, technologies, and the speakers providing their personal perspective on each of these topics, to me, was very valuable. So I encourage everybody to join. Okay, now maybe looking a little bit into the future, what major trends do you see, or where do you think the industry will improve or develop the most for the next few years?
Yeah, so I mean, again, if we take this framework of the 3 markets that we serve, right, and we start like with oil and gas, right, I think the general expectation in the next few years is that oil markets will likely be oversupplied. There'll be a lot more oil than demand, at least a couple to maybe 3.5 million barrels of additional supply than demand. And demand is a bit depressed because the traditional drivers of demand, China, India, economic growth there has been slower than anticipated. And collectively, so we expect oil markets to be oversupplied. Right now, of course, on top of that, we are seeing OPEC kind of going back to their old production targets. We likely will see more Russian oil coming into the market. And then shale oil here in the US continues to grow at a steady clip, right? So collectively, I think oil markets are oversupplied. We expect that to continue for a while. Gas, on the other hand, is finally coming to the point, right, where it might be in balance, and depending on how much new growth that you'll see in power generation, especially for data centers, one could argue that gas, without any further increase in production, could become uh, quite tightly balanced between supply and demand, right? So we definitely think that this is the golden age of gas, right? And LNG, if you will. There's a big growth super cycle that natural gas is going to enjoy in the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of this is, we've been talking about how gas will be the transition or the bridge fuel to the energy transition. Now, of course, the expectations for the energy transition are still that it's going to take a bit longer than people had anticipated. Although, if you look at some of the forecasts that we have been publishing over the last 5 to 8 years, we've always said that even in a net zero future by 2050, oil and gas will continue to play a fairly important role. 15 to 20% of the overall energy mix will still be coming from oil and gas, if not more, even in a net zero future, right? So I think we see gas as a bright spot. A lot of LNG export capacity coming up here in the US, a lot of gas-fired power generation capacity for the data centers, which need a lot of power generation. But interestingly, even the energy transition is going to benefit from data centers. Data centers are going to, the expectation for data centers and hyperscalers is so high in terms of capacity additions. And a lot of these hyperscalers want clean power for their data centers. So essentially what that means is that you'll see a lot of investments in low carbon energy sources, whether it's solar, renewables, geothermal, but even small modular nuclear reactors, for example. So we see those to be bright spots here going forward. I think if you focus exclusively in and around energy transition, we see biofuels as to be a bright spot here over the next decade or so. A lot of investments, a lot of technologies reaching maturity. Sustainable aviation fuel, we think, will see progress beyond HEFA into, say, alcohol to jet, for example. I think gasification, power to liquids, we are seeing some projects come up, but we'll kind of have to see what their economics looks like. We are a little pessimistic around how much capacity can we see in power to liquids, for example, in the near to medium term. In the long run, power to liquids could potentially become a big player, but right now we'll kind of have to see what the economics look like based on this first set of projects that are coming up. Hydrogen is going to be challenging here for the next few years, but there will be interesting niche cases and applications for hydrogen. Carbon capture, we think, has a lot of runway because there's a lot of interest. Direct air capture, we'll see again what the first set of projects look like. A lot of us in the chemical engineering universe are skeptical of direct air capture for various good reasons. But I also, we've done a lot of studies on direct air capture. And what is interesting is that just as everybody doesn't drive a Honda Accord or the most efficient hybrid, and there's the people who drive a Hummer versus people who drive a Mercedes Benz, I think there will be applications where direct air capture will make sense because there is a segment in the industry, especially large tech companies who have ambitious decarbonization goals, who are saying, hey, I don't want to wait for point source carbon capture solutions. I need to start capturing some carbon, and I'm willing to pay a high price. If the technology can show its promise, there are some customers for CO2 reduction, CDRs coming out of direct air capture as a technology. But we'll have to see, right, how it kind of shakes out.
All right.
The last segment, chemicals, is challenging. I'll just, a lot of overcapacity in the market, predominantly led by a lot of investments in China. So we'll have to kind of see a lot of ethylene capacity is shutting down, as you probably know. So I think a few more years of pain here in the chemical industry.
Well, thanks for the overview. Much appreciated. So we miss anything, Stan? Do you have any question?
I think that's good. And Uday's insights is spot on. I think there's a lot of wise observations, a lot of wise advice, and his take on, especially where the market's going to go. So I think the only thing that's left in front of us today is that we have to have your comical anecdote, your comical story, one that you can tell us that we can share with the general public. How can you make this Comical Engineer a podcast really the Comical Engineer podcast? Share your funniest story with us so we can let the public know about it.
Yeah, like when we were talking about this ahead of you'd mentioned this angle, so I was wondering, right? And some of the best jokes and pranks that I have seen were when I was when I was working in refineries, for example. There's this entire independent parallel universe of refinery techs and operators who basically spend their entire career working in a particular refinery. So they form very deep relationships, and they have their own codes and processes and rituals by which they bring people in within the team. And operations work is hard, right? It's super challenging. So these people are also very straightforward, and what you see is what you get. I was on a plant startup at one of the refineries, and this was my first experience in refining operations, and so I showed up on the day. And having a PhD is a bit of a disadvantage in a refinery. You'll get riffed about it and to no end. And but ConocoPhillips had a good culture of moving scientists out of R&D into refineries and bringing them back in and all that. And everybody, some people did well and some people struggled with that. And I remember showing up on day one, and one of the unit engineers said, I hope you're going to be a lot better than Blister. And I said, I had this like weird look on my face. I just didn't understand what he was talking about. And then he was referring to one of the guys who the company had rotated through and they nicknamed him Blister because in their words, they said he showed up after the work was done, just like a blister shows up after. So that's
Wow.
that's one example that always stuck in my head.
That's part of it. And I have to just tell you, your talk about the PhD reminds me of the same. Not that I've ever had PhD, but I did work with an individual that was the same category, and we were in the Carolinas in one of the chemical plastics plants there. And I heard these exact words when he kind of turned his back. He said, I'll give him a working man's PhD. That's what he'll get. And that line ended up in a country music song for Aaron Tippin somewhere. So,
oh wow.
So yours wasn't the working man's PhD, but it sure made me smile when I heard it. That reminded me of that story for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's why we talk about all of the things that make us learn and do what we do, and our experiences and our life experiences that have come from our work and what the lessons that we've learned are all about those kind of interactions. And a lot of those people, there's a generational gap of the people that you worked with, I worked with, between wherever they were and what they knew, how the information that they had in the plant and how they used it to where operators and new first-time chemical engineers that go to the plant, process engineers, and what they're having to deal with today. So I hope that tradition doesn't go away. And there's a lot of other blisters to replace. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a great story and a great closeout this podcast. We're very good in time, about 40 minutes, so perfect. Thank you very much, Uday. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being a guest on our podcast. And thank you, Stan, for co-hosting. And bye, everybody, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.